Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are going to give it a few minutes and let people trickle in, and then we will get started. Hi, everybody. Good morning. We're going to give it maybe one more minute and just let people get settled before we get started. I hope it's warm. I know it's chilly everywhere. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Book Buzz. Happy New Year. We are so excited to share some upcoming titles with you all. We have 18 presenters here that are all so excited to just tell you about some of their favorite upcoming books. And we are going to kick things off with Erica from Soho. So Erica, take it away.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have some really exciting titles to share from our crime and literary imprints. All of these are available for request on NetGalley and Edelweiss, so definitely feel free to check them out after this buzz. With that, we'll get us started. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. First up, Soho's biggest book of the year arrives on June 4th. The Comfort of Ghosts is Jacqueline Winspear's 18th and final novel in the groundbreaking and internationally best-selling Maisie Dobbs series. Soho published the first two books in the series, Maisie Dobbs and Birds of a Feather, many, many years ago, and we're thrilled and honored to welcome Jacqueline and Maisie back for this momentous occasion. Over 17 previous novels, including multiple award winners and bestsellers, the Maisie Dobbs series has become a modern classic in the realm of historical mysteries, garnering hundreds of thousands of followers around the world, with the eponymous female investigator offering a compassionate glimpse into the difficult years between the aftermath of World War I and World War II. The Comfort of Ghosts takes place in 1945 London as war-torn England grapples with its future. When Maisie Dobbs visits a vacant Belgravia mansion, she finds 4 adolescent orphans squatting there with a demobilized soldier, ill and reeling from his experiences overseas. Maisie is deeply puzzled by the children's reticence. They're evasive when telling their stories, and even more mysteriously, they appear to possess hand-to-hand combat skills one might expect of trained adults in wartime. Her quest to bring comfort to the youngsters and the ailing soldier brings to light a decades-old mystery concerning Maisie's first husband, James Compton, who was killed while piloting an experimental aircraft. As Maisie picks apart the threads of her dead husband's life, she's forced to examine her own painful past and question beliefs she always accepted as true. Maisie Dobbs is a woman of her time, yet familiar in ours, one who inspires with her resilience and capacity for endurance. This final assignment of her own choosing not only opens a new future for Maisie and her family, but serves as a fascinating portrayal of the challenges facing the people of Britain at the close of the Second World War. Fans of this series will find much to love as Maisie Dobbs takes her final bow in this poignant series conclusion. Next, please. Switching gears. In May, we have a new mystery from literary master Andromeda Romano Lax, The Deepest Lake. Andromeda is the author of Behave and most recently Annie and the Wolves. She's known for blending genres with an extraordinary attention to detail that brings her explorations of serious and sometimes quirky topics into sharp focus. This is her first foray into crime fiction, and it's a twisty, suspenseful, and devastating mystery in the vein of Lisa Jewell and Delia Owens that also peels back the curtain of the writing world. The Deepest Lake takes place at a luxury memoir writing workshop in Guatemala, run by Eva Marshall, a famous charismatic writer known for her candid and controversial memoirs. Jules, a 20-something-year-old aspiring writer, idolizes Eva and goes to Guatemala, where she ends up mysteriously drowning. Although her death is ruled an accident, her mother, Rose, can't shake the feeling that there's more to the story, especially since Jules was deeply afraid of water and had stopped texting in the days before her death. Desperate for answers and closure 3 months afterwards, Rose uses a false name to enroll in a writing workshop and search for clues about what really happened to Jules. Interlaced with Rose's investigation are flashback chapters showing Jules's perspective at the workshop and her growing disillusionment with Eva. As the mystery of Jules's death comes into focus, so too does the mystery of the workshop itself. Is this a place where women come to heal or one where they're injured further? The Deepest Lake is at once a twisty thriller, a tearjerker about grief and a mother-daughter relationship, and a fascinating peek into the toxic, exclusionary side of high-profile writing workshops. I can tell you, as I was reading this, I gasped, I screamed, I cried, and I felt every emotion in between as I stayed on the edge of my seat the whole time. Perfect for suspense addicts, this is a powerful and propulsive story full of visceral emotion that you will not soon forget. Next, please. Last but not least, from our literary imprint in April, we have The Audacity by Ryan Chapman, author of the phenomenally reviewed novel Riots I Have Known. In the vein of Succession and Harry Kunzru's Red Pill, this bracing satire of the mega wealthy and the implosion of a Theranos-like company is refreshing and funny. Personally, I actually chuckled numerous times while reading, so when I say it's funny, I genuinely mean that. And it also layers in a sobering depiction of immigration and assimilation in America. The Audacity takes place over the agonizing weekend before a blockbuster expose is set to reveal Victoria Stevens's multi-billion-dollar health tech startup as a massive fraud. Victoria's gone missing, and her husband, Guy Sarvananthan, suspects that she's faked her death as he's left behind to face the fallout and potential jail time. Unwilling to face the impending crash of his lavish lifestyle, Guy takes Victoria's place at a billionaire philanthropy summit that weekend on a private island where the 0.0001% who have gathered to decide on one global problem they'll eradicate forever. As Guy drinks and drugs his way into oblivion over the weekend, he reflects on his Sri Lankan immigrant family's lifelong lessons to embrace assimilation, the marriage that scooped him out of his life as a mediocre composer, and the hopelessness of escaping the catastrophe before him. Meanwhile, Victoria narrates her side of the story from an off-the-grid location in California, in the desert where she plots her comeback. Chapman's wit, humor, and unabashed imagination are on full display as he satirizes the schemes and sociopathic tendencies of the obscenely wealthy. The Audacity is a darkly enjoyable, riches to rags tragic comedy perfect for fans of The White Lotus, The Dropout, and Martin Amis. And final slide, please. That's all I have for you today. My email's on screen, and again, these are all in NetGalley and Edelweiss. Thank you so much, and with that, I'll hand it over.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Casterly from Blackstone Publishing. Thanks for joining us today to hear about our upcoming books. First, we have Cool Food. In Cool Food, celebrated actor and philanthropist Robert Downey Jr. and New York Times bestselling author Thomas Costigan team up to discover how we can erase our carbon footprints one bite at a time. We're very excited about this one. You can see it has some great reviews coming in. It also has some exciting national publicity happening this month. Robert was on Jimmy Kimmel Live last week talking about the book, and there will be a Good Morning America interview with Robert and Tom on January 22nd, and also appearances on The View and Nightline. People Magazine will be running an exclusive recipe from Cool Food in print and online later this month. So this is definitely one of our top titles. for the season, and it is coming out January 23rd, next week. So next we have A Plague on Both Your Houses, a brand new novel from New York Times bestselling author Robert Little. A Plague on Both Your Houses is a thrilling tale of love and war. As two warring mafias fight for Moscow after the fall of the Soviet Union, Yulia and Roman navigate the minefield of a star-crossed love affair as they attempt to escape a destiny that appears preordained. So this is a modern reimagining of Romeo and Juliet mixed with well-researched Soviet-era Russian history, and it's releasing on February 6th. Next, we have Lonely for You Only. From New York Times and USA Today bestselling author and book talk sensation Monica Murphy comes a swoon-worthy new adult romance. When 18-year-old heiress Scarlett and washed-up singer Tate share a kiss at a party and the video goes viral, they agree to start a fake relationship to help build back his career. But before long, they discover their feelings might not be fake after all. Monica Murphy also writes under the name Karen Erickson, and she's known for her steamy romances. Lauren Lane says this one is passionate, sexy, and heartwarming. It's releasing on February 6th, just in time for Valentine's Day. Next, we have Promise Kept. In this stunning sequel to Promise Broken, award-winning urban fiction author Kwan spins a pulse-pounding story about surviving, thriving, and the consequences of love. And it's releasing on March 19th. Next, we have Lilith. From the internationally best-selling author of I Am Not Who You Think I Am, which was a New York Times Thriller of the Year, comes Lilith, an incendiary powerhouse of a novel that strikes straight to the wounded heart of America. After a school shooting leaves her son with traumatic injuries, kindergarten teacher Elizabeth Ross commits her own act of shocking violence that captures the attention of the world. This is a dark book about a difficult subject, but that is exactly the type of story that Eric Rickstad excels at telling with his poetic prose. And it is releasing March 19th. Next, we have 4 Minutes. 4 Minutes is the latest brilliant techno thriller from the #1 internationally best-selling duo behind the Sons of Valor series, Brian Andrews and Jeffrey Wilson. Special Operations Chief Tyler Brooks leads a new kind of terrorism task force, one that collects intelligence from the future to stop attacks in the present. But there's a catch. Each mission can only last 4 minutes. So this has all the action and suspense that Andrews and Wilson's fans love, plus it has a new science fiction aspect that should attract new readers. And it is releasing April 2nd. Next, we have Dancing on the Edge, a journey of living, loving, and tumbling through Hollywood. From cultural icon Russ Tamblyn comes a memoir of an unconventional life growing up as a child actor and teen movie star, finding his creative voice and coming of age through fatherhood and self-expression. Tamblyn's career has spanned the heyday of the musical in the 50s and 60s with roles in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and West Side Story, all the way to roles in iconic television, including Twin Peaks and beyond. We've gotten some fantastic quotes in for this one, and more are coming. Ryan Reynolds calls it a thrilling high-wire read. Quentin Tarantino says a killer story about one of our last remaining living legends of the screen. David Lynch just gave it an endorsement that didn't make it onto the slide there. It had a cover reveal by People magazine last year, which has already started to generate a lot of buzz for it. And Russ's daughter, actress Amber Tamblyn, will be involved in promoting the book, so that will definitely give it a boost. And it will be read by the author, and it's releasing April 9th. Next, we have Murder on Demand. Murder on Demand, the new book in the delightful morning show mystery series from best-selling author and beloved TV news icon Al Roker, finds his character Billy Blessing investigating a suspicious boating accident in Long Island. We're also reissuing the older books in the series. So this one is coming out April 23rd, and those will be out January, February, and March as a lead up. And next we have Home is Where the Bodies Are. This is the new one from Geneva Rose. So from the New York Times bestselling author of The Perfect Marriage and You Shouldn't Have Come Here comes a chilling family thriller about the sometimes literal skeletons in the closet. Most home movies show happy family memories, but this one reveals a deadly secret. Three siblings must decide whether to leave the past in the past or uncover the dark secret their parents took to the grave. I won't give away anything else about the plot because this is one that you're definitely going to want to read or listen to. And it is releasing April 30th. Next, we have The Girl from the Grand Hotel. Camille Aubry, the #1 best-selling author of Cooking for Picasso and The Godmothers, returns with a dazzling historical novel that brings readers into the glamorous world of the first Cannes Film Festival and the deadly atmosphere of Europe on the brink of war. And it's releasing on April 30th. And it's like I've run out of time, but lastly, we just have Cold Victory by Carl Marlantes coming out in audio. So excited for that one. And then the last slide has our contact information. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dina Sherman. I'm the School and Library Marketing Director at Disney Publishing, and I'm excited to share some of our upcoming titles across all our imprints. And as a reminder for those who may not remember, National Geographic is now part of Disney Publishing. We're super happy to have them with us. All right, next slide. So I want to start off with a few books that are about to come out in the next few weeks, just as a quick reminder. So The Mayor of Maxwell Street by debut author Avery Cunningham is an epic love story that explores the American dream between the monolith of Jim Crow, the inflexible world of the original Black upper class, and the violence of 1920s Chicago. This book has been getting a ton of buzz, and I can't wait for everyone to read it. We're also going to be doing a book club kit with Bookish for this one. Hello, Friends is comedian Dulce Sloan's first memoir, organized into essays from her life and showing how she's used her masterful wit to challenge the status quo. You may have seen her on the Emmys last night or this weekend with Trevor Noah. They won, which is great. So have you ever dated an adult who roller skated or gone out with a mechanic just to get free auto service? I'm not answering either of those questions, but yes, she has that story for you. And I'm thrilled to say that Dulce will be the closing keynote speaker at PLA, the PLA conference in April. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, wait, I have one more book. Sorry, go back. I made a mistake. Sorry. The Mornings of Mackerel Sky is by debut novelist MZ, who also happens to live here in Portland, Maine, right down the road from me. They say Mackerel Sky was founded when Captain Burbank first saw Nimue the mermaid and forgot the sea. Stricken by love, he moored his tall ship and made camp on the highest cliff, hoping to forever gaze upon her beauty. 300 years later, the legend of this mermaid and the captain who loved her still invigorates and haunts the inhabitants of this small Maine lobstering town. Now we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So The Cave is a searing memoir that tells the story of a young doctor and activist in Damascus. The only woman to have ever run a wartime hospital, she saved her peers from the atrocities of war while contending with the patriarchal conservatism around her. Growing up in Assad's Syria, Balor knew she wanted to be more than a housewife, even as her siblings were married off in their teens. As the revolution unfolded, she volunteered at a local clinic and was thrown into the deep end of emergency medicine. Amani Balor is truly a game changer who'll be remembered as one of history's great heroines. A passionately committed humanitarian, she is determined that others will escape the horrors that she survived. Next slide, please. Now, if you've never run or had friends run in a Disney race, you are missing out. I am 100% not a runner, but I have seen my friends running in Mickey ears, tutus, you name it, and it's kind of amazing. So this is the first ever official guidebook created by the Road Race Division of the Walt Disney Company. Yes, I was surprised as well to know we have one of those. The guide covers everything from the basics of running, planning a most magical runcation to the parks, which race is best for themselves or their family, what gear is needed for a Run Disney event, and what resources are available at the parks. And it's written by Scott Douglas, who writes extensively for Runner's World magazine. Also has a foreword by Olympian and bestselling author Jeff Galloway and sidebars by Galloway and Olympian Molly Huddle to offer additional tips on training, gear, etiquette, and more. Next slide, please. So this beautiful follow-up to the national bestsellers, 50 States, 5,000 Ideas, and 100 Parks, 5,000 Ideas, offers foodies the ultimate road trip around the United States and Canada with 1,000 of the best bites and sips from every state and province. I've got a great spread on the next slide if you could go to that. Filled with the top dishes in every state, think crab cakes in Maryland, Chicago-style deep dish pizza in Illinois, wine in Oregon's Willamette Valley. Readers will discover the regional delicacies that make up the great tastes of the United States and Canada. It also includes expert advice on where to find the top meals at local establishments, which fine dining experiences are worth the price tag, and when to visit for the best food and drink festivals. And this slide just makes me so hungry. Next slide, please. Secrets of the Octopus is the companion to the highly anticipated National Geographic television special coming later this year. Acclaimed author Cy Montgomery, known thanks to her best-selling book, The Soul of an Octopus, as the Octopus Whisperer, returns to the species she knows and loves, offering current and compassionate stories about the scientists on the front lines of octopus research and conservation. If you go to the next slide, again, we've got beautiful photo, enhanced with these vivid National Geographic photography. This is a magical journey into the world of the octopus, bringing us closer than ever to these amazing and elusive creatures. These photos are just astounding. I can't wait for you to see them. Next, please. So these days, many of the world's most beloved places have become expensive and overcrowded, making their celebrated allure that much harder to enjoy. Thankfully, Here Not There reveals 100 alternative destinations to the standard travel playbook, as well as expert tips on when to visit, where to eat, what to see, and where to stay. And again, I've got some gorgeous photos on the next slide. Thank you. So some of the authentic, unexpected, and rewarding destinations you might find in here are a road trip along West Virginia's byways instead of New England's highways for brilliant autumn colors, a trip to Detroit to find Art Deco skyscrapers, and more. Next, I'm sorry, I'm running very late, but I only have 2 left. Okay. Switching gears to fiction, The Northline is a new novel from debut author Matt Reardon, not Riordan, Reardon. Everyone believes Adam to be something he's not, and sometimes that's because he's told them a story. Sometimes he's told himself one. So when Adam joins an Alaskan fishing crew that's promising quick money, he finds the adventure and authenticity of a fisherman's life revelatory. But when a strike threatens the entire season and violence stalks the waves, Adam is thrust into a struggle for survival at the edge of the world, where evolutionary and social forces collide. And next. Lastly, I am thrilled to share the 4th installment in our Meant to Be collection, which are modern day rom-com reimaginings of some of your favorite Disney stories. I think you can guess from the title and the cover that this one is Tangled. And I love it because it is about a young girl who is homeschooled and grew up on a off-the-grid homestead who finally gets to go to college. During a science class, realizes that her parents may not be her parents and ends up on a road trip with bad boy Fitz. And as you can guess, they may or may not fall in love on that trip. And don't forget to vote for that for library reads. And then that's it for me. On the next slide is all our information. Please do look for us online, and we have galleys up on NetGalley and Edelweiss. Thanks so much.
Hello, everybody. I am Golda Rademacher from Norton, and I have some highlights from our spring list for you. But on the next slide, I want to remind everyone that The Waters by Bonnie Jo Campbell is the January Read with Jenna pick. So I hope you're seeing some more demand at your library. And Bonnie is scheduled to be on the Today Show on the 25th. Next slide. Fareed Zakaria, author of The Post-American World and host of Fareed Zakaria GPS, has a new book coming out in March, Age of Revolutions. This looks at revolutions and movements in the past that have influenced where we are today. Zakaria combines intellectual range, deep historical insight, and uncanny prescience to once again reframe and illuminate our turbulent present. Next slide. So on a different note, we have So You Wanna Run a Country by Kevin Holohan being published by Akashic. This is a satirical cyberpunk romp pitting fascist feudalism against rampant reality television corruption with the future of humanity at stake. And it just got a positive review from Carcass. Next slide. The Road to Freedom is coming in April from Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz. This book looks at America's core political and economic systems, which Stiglitz says do not always offer true freedom. Stiglitz wants us to think about what it would take to have a society that values public good and how it could enhance meaningful freedoms for most individuals. Next slide. So in her first book of nonfiction, We Loved It All, Lydia Millett draws on nearly 3 decades of experience advocating for endangered species at the Center for Biological Diversity to capture the complex tapestry that each of us weaves with the world. You can give this to any of your fans of Annie Dillard, Robert McFarlane, Barry Lopez, Terry Tempest Williams, and other writers who weave the natural world into their work. Next slide. So we're always happy for a new book by Anne Hood. Her past books have been popular with book clubs, and I think this one will be too. In The Stolen Child, a dying man hires an adventurous young woman to help him unravel a mystery in this moving novel of secrets, forgiveness, and love. Anne Hood captures a world of possibility and romance through the eyes of a young woman learning to claim her place in it. Give this to your fans of Anne Napolitano, Jess Walters, and of course, Anne Hood's previous books. Next slide. And we're also excited about a new novel from Claire Massoud. She is the best-selling author of The Emperor's Children and The Burning Girl, among others. A fun fact about this strange, eventful history is that she was inspired by her own family history, and the photo on the cover is actually of her father. This is a historical novel that spans 7 decades, 5 different perspectives, and travels to many countries. She pulls you into the lives of the characters while connecting one family to larger 20th century movements and showing how people have often made flawed decisions in the context of their historical moment. Next slide. So Fu Pei Mei was on television for 40 years and has been called the Julia Child of Chinese cooking. In Chop, Fry, Watch, Learn, biographer Michelle King reveals how Fu became the ultimate culinary touchstone for audiences in Taiwan and around the world, and tells her fascinating story. Next slide. So I thought that everybody knew this already, but I have recently heard from some people that they didn't realize Lemony Snicket was the pen name for Daniel Handler. Now, with the 25th anniversary of the publication of the first book in this series of unfortunate events, we have a book that is part memoir and part inspiration for aspiring writers. Handler reflects on his life experiences, some of them deeply personal and revealed for the first time, and he talks about the cultural influences that shaped his writing, both under his own name and as Lemony Snicket. Next slide. Westport, coming in May from Mysterious Press, is James Comey's second thriller starring attorney Nora Carlton. She is thrown into investigating a potential fraud situation, but then when a coworker gets murdered, it seems like she's being framed. Comey's first thriller, Central Park West, was a bestseller and got great reviews. Next slide. Coming from Tin House, we have the debut novel by Morgan Talty. His collection of stories, Night of the Living Rez, came out last year to much acclaim and has been a bestseller for Tin House. The new novel, Fire Exit, is a masterful and unforgettable story of family, legacy, bloodlines, culture, and inheritance. Who belongs where? And is it always necessary to reveal secrets? Tommy Orange says, this book is filled with humor and humanity's strange wonder at its own desperation and depravity, as only Talty can do. The novel absolutely smolders. And next slide. So here are just a few more highlights from our summer list. We've just signed on Akashic and The Experiment, so we've got even more variety than we've had before. And I hope you'll check out our full catalog on Edelweiss. And on the next slide, there is my contact information. I do the ARC giveaways in the library newsletter. You can find lots of digital ARCs on Edelweiss and NetGalley. And just a note that Tin House, Penzler Publishers, and Fantagraphics have all set up their own separate NetGalley profiles. So I hope you'll search them out in addition to the Norton page. So thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. And thanks for chatting, everybody.
Hi, everyone. It's Virginia Stanley from HarperCollins. Thanks for your time today. I'm going to go through a few housekeeping slides very quickly. Next slide. Every title here is on this Edelweiss catalog. Next. Just some housekeeping. All the things that we offer through Library Love Fest, you can go there and see what we offer as far as author events. Next. We have a new book club group called Book Club Snug. So if you're inclined, on January 24th, we'll have Laura Zigman and Catherine Newman talking about their books. And this information can be found in the chat. Next slide. And Writers to Watch, we do monthly, and Rainbow Rowell will be one of the speakers, along with Catherine Newman, Wanda Mars, and Alan Mars. Now, let's go to the books. Rainbow Rowell, speaking of, while she has made her name with her best-selling YA hits like Eleanor and Park and Fangirl, she's also had terrific success with her adult novels, and Slow Dance is her first book for adults since 2014. It's the story of two teens, Shiloh and Carrie, whose friendship has helped them through their hard-scrabble high school years, their childhood. When Shiloh goes off to college, Carrie joins the Navy. Fast forward 14 years, Shiloh is 33, divorced, a single mom, living in her childhood home, and a chance to meet up with Carrie all these years later offers a chance to rekindle their friendship and maybe more. As I mentioned, she'll be on Writers to Watch, so do check that out, Feb 7. Go to the Library Love Fest page. Next is AJ Finn's book. It's coming out in a month. Won't spend a ton of time on it, but you all know The Woman in the Window was a huge psychological thriller, as is this one, much anticipated. It's about an avid mystery reader who is invited by her favorite novelist to his San Francisco home to tell his story in the hope of unraveling the truth behind a tragedy that tore his family apart years earlier. He wrote to her, "I'll be dead in 3 months. Come tell my story." And so she does. Next is The Lost Letters from Martha's Vineyard by Michael Callahan in 1959. Hollywood ingenue Marcy Wells seems to have the world at her feet. She's far removed from her Nebraska roots. She's crafted herself into this glorious Oscar-nominated actress, engaged to an up-and-coming director, and then suddenly she vanishes without a trace. 60 years later, a woman is unpacking her recently deceased grandmother's attic, only to discover a long-lost box of souvenirs that reveal the grandmother who raised her was the mysterious Mercy Wells. She puts on her investigative skills and gets to work. This is great for book clubs, and at the heart of the book is the question, what do we really know about the people who raised us? Next. Welcome to Gloria's Tortuga by Frances Siegel. This is about a woman, a veterinarian, who has taken up a fellowship on the tiny South Atlantic fictional island of Tuga de Oro to study the endangered gold-coined tortoises. And while she does love tortoises, there's more at stake here. She's secretly come to believe that she has her own connection to this remote and eccentric island. There's a great cast of characters here, including a menagerie of animals, dogs, cats, goats, and of course, the endangered tortoises. It's absolutely delightful. Think James Herriot under the palm trees. Next. The Goddess of Warsaw by Lisa Barr. This is by the New York Times bestselling author of Woman on Fire. It's a page-turner set in LA in 2005 and Warsaw in 1943. It's about a golden age movie star with a hidden past. Lena Browning is a living legend, but before then, she was Bina Blonsky, a Polish Jew whose life and family were destroyed by the Nazis. Fast forward, after a decade of escaping the horrors of the ghetto, she's now known as Lena and rises to fame in Hollywood and uses her power and fame as a movie star at a last chance to right the past's wrong. This is a genre-bending novel that will appeal to fans of historical women's fiction, action-packed thrillers, and romance. The author addresses timely issues of the objectification of women, sexual assault, and power dynamics. Last book, I Don't Want to Go Home Again by Nick Corasaniti. This is an oral history of the Stone Pony, which is Asbury Park, New Jersey's legendary music venue, the club that launched Bruce Springsteen, John Bon Jovi, and many other New Jersey's most iconic musical acts. This author wrote a popular story about the Stone Pony in the Times that was tweeted out and was recommended by Springsteen, who was interviewed for the piece, and the book emerged from that feature. As I say, it tells the story of not only Springsteen, but Kenny Chesney, Russell Crowe, the Kinks, and also is a record of the ups and downs of Asbury Park and the Jersey Shore. It's essential reading for music fans and everyone interested in what is quintessentially an American story. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Timmons, and I am pleased to be presenting some of Macmillan's spring and summer titles for you today. On this first slide, we have our information, and then on the next slide, we have instructions on how to get e-galleys from us on Edelweiss, so please feel free to refer back to that. And next slide, please. Don't forget that every Monday, we host a virtual book talking series called Happy Half Hour, where you can learn even more about our forthcoming titles. So without further ado, let me get on to our titles for today. First up, we have Just Some Stupid Love Story by Caitlin Doyle. This is a debut about a rom-com screenwriter who doesn't believe in love and a divorce attorney who does. 15 years after their breakup, Molly and Seth are forced together at their high school reunion. This is where they decide to make a bet. Whoever can predict the fate of 5 couples before the next reunion must declare that the other is right about true love. The catch, the 5th couple is the 2 of them. This will remind you of Curtis Sittenfeld and Emily Henry and invoke the same nostalgic feelings as When Harry Met Sally and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Wickedly funny, sexy, and brimming with laughs and heart, Just Some Stupid Love Story is for everyone who believes in soulmates, even if they would never admit it. Next, we have The Fall of Roe by Lisa Lehrer and Elizabeth Diaz. In 2012, a group of conservative women, the Sisterhood, worried their political party was falling prey to the swell of progressivism in American culture. They decided to retrain the men that led the Republican Party, convince them that digging in their heels against abortion was the only means to holding power, and slowly they would turn a minority belief into something that would define an entire nation. The Fall of Roe doesn't just speak to one side of the political divide, and Lehrer and Diaz write for the book club audience with an accessible story that generates conversation around wine clubs, coffee tables, and Bible study groups. This book asks readers to rethink what abortion even is and why America cares about it so much. Next is Devil is Fine by John Bircher. This is a profoundly moving novel of what it means to be a father, a son, a writer, and a biracial American fighting to reconcile the past with the present. Fans of Did You Hear About Kitty Carr, Devil House, and My Monticello will especially love this one. Amidst reeling from the sudden death of his teenage son, our narrator learns that he has just inherited a plot of land from his estranged grandfather. As a biracial Black man struggling with the many facets of his identity, he's now the owner of a former plantation, passed down by the men on his white mother's side. Ultimately a father-son story, Devil is Fine is funny, sad, and has a touch of magical realism that makes for an emotional read. This is an unconventional take on grief that packs a huge punch, touching on important and controversial topics with humor and nuance. Next, we have Lenny Marks Gets Away with Murder by Karen Main. Lenny Marks is never unprepared. She spends her days teaching at the local elementary school and her nights watching reruns of Friends and playing Scrabble against an imaginary Monica Geller. And Lenny is very good at not remembering what happened the day her mother left, until a letter from the parole board arrives in the mail. When her desperate attempts to ignore it fail, Lenny starts to unravel. Lenny is a quirky, socially awkward, and completely lovable heroine with an unforgettable voice. Readers will find themselves relating to her bittersweet journey to confront her past and reimagine her future, and the themes of self-discovery, trauma, and redemption provide much for book clubs to discuss. If you loved Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine and The Collected Regrets of Clover, then this one is for you. The Wedding People by Allison Espach. When Phoebe Stone arrives in Newport, Rhode Island for her vacation, she's immediately mistaken for one of the wedding guests at the wedding taking place there that weekend. Meanwhile, the bride thinks she has accounted for every detail, but she didn't expect Phoebe would throw a wrench in things. When these 2 women meet, they suddenly can't stop confiding in each other, and they suspect they were meant to cross paths all along. Simultaneously hilarious and heartfelt, this is a fresh, wryly funny, and big-hearted story about taking stock of your life in the middle of it and starting anew. Fans of Frederick Backman, Tracy Lang, Bad Summer People, and Remarkably Bright Creatures will find much to love in this one. Next is The Stranger at the Wedding by A.E. Gauntlet. This sizzling thriller will make you think twice before saying I do. Annie never really believed in love, that is, until she met Mark at a group counseling session for trauma survivors. Their whirlwind romance propels Annie through their courtship all the way to their wedding day. But as she stands at the altar, she spots a stranger in the crowd and soon learns that her new life isn't going to be the happily ever after she had planned. This is a marriage thriller featuring an unreliable narrator and a story of desire, obsession, and betrayal. If you love The Golden Couple and Gone Girl, then this one is for you. Next, we have Glass Houses by Madeline Ashby. This one will appeal to fans of And Then There Were None, Dark Matter, and The Power. A group of employees and their CEO, celebrating the sale of their remarkable emotion mapping AI algorithm, crash onto a not quite deserted tropical island. Luckily, those who survived find a fully stocked private palace and with all of the latest technological updates. The house, however, has more secrets than anyone might have guessed and a much darker reason for having been built and left behind. The author's own background in technology, futurism, and AI gives a darkly realistic lens to her writing, especially with a story that skewers startup culture while skillfully referencing classic mystery and noir tropes. Ashby has an impressive talent for combining the eerily familiar with the addictively urgent. And last, we have Sacrificial Animals by Kaylee Peterson. The last thing Nick Morrow expected to receive was an invitation from his father to return home. When he moved away from rural Nebraska, he believed he was leaving everything behind there, including his abusive father, Carlisle. But neither Nick nor his brother Joshua, who was disowned for marrying an Asian woman named Amelia, can ignore such summons from their father, who hopes for a deathbed reconciliation. Joshua and Carlisle quickly warm to each other while Nick and Amelia are left to their own devices. Soon, a flirtation between Nick and Amelia blooms into romance. Though not long after the affair turns intimate, Nick begins to suspect that Amelia's interest in him may be sinister. Punctuated by scenes from Nick's adolescent years, when memories of a queer awakening and a shadowy presence altered the trajectory of his life forever, Sacrificial Animals explores the violent legacy of inherited trauma and the total collapse of a family in its wake. Fans of Kitran Ward and Caitlin Starling will want to pick this one up. And finally, on the last slide, here's our information once again. I hope you enjoyed hearing about our upcoming titles, and thanks so much for listening.
Hello, I am Melissa from Hachette Book Group. I'm having a little challenge with my video. Oh, yay, hello, it's there. Okay, I really shouldn't be babbling because I have a million titles to talk about, so let's get to it. I promised I'd be on time. Next slide, please. Wolf at the Table. This is a team favorite, and just take a leap with me. It's like the book child of Hello, Beautiful and American Psycho. And please talk to Annie or me after you read it. Next slide, please. Oh, Skin and Bones. Yes. Okay. Well, this is exciting. Renee Watson is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, and over the past decade, she has authored 15 young adult books. She received a Coretta Scott King Award and a Newbery Honor for Piecing Me Together, to name a few of the accolades Renee has earned. In Skin and Bones, Renee is shifting to an adult audience. Yay. We meet Lena. She's 40. She's a mom, engaged, great friends, happy until her wedding day. You may have intuited vows are not exchanged, and adrift, Lena works to rebuild her life. And a lot of this takes place with talking about the Pacific Northwest and the importance of Black voices. So with Watson's poetic voice, Skin and Bones tells the story of heartbreak, healing, and who society makes space for. Next slide, please. Oh, Michael Crichton and James Patterson. Yeah, those dudes are working together. I know you're like, Melissa, Michael Crichton's dead. Yes, correct. But his widow has had this unfinished manuscript for years, and before she decided what to do with it. And then she decided to work with Jim, and she wrote a very sweet note about why, which is up on the Edelweiss page. And hopefully we'll have galleys. Thank you. Next, oh, there's a volcano. Next slide. Oh, The Unwedding. Ellery Wainwright is spending her 20th anniversary alone at a gorgeous Big Sur resort. Abruptly divorced by her midlife existential crisis mess of a husband, she is alone and unmoored from everything she's known in her adult life and trying to figure out a way forward. Then she discovers the body of a young man floating in the pool. Guess what? Not good. So, and then, hijinks ensue. Ali Condi is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Match series, and she's pivoting from a YA dystopian romance to mystery thriller like Ruth Ware, and Lucy Foley fans. Next slide, please. Joseph's memoir, Sink, received enthusiastic praise from the New York Times Book Review, Washington Post, and more, as well as glowing blurbs from Carmen Maria Machado and Mitchell S. Jackson. Joseph is following up his memoir with a debut novel, a work of autofiction about an Iraq war vet named Joseph finding his footing. This is a powerful examination of everyday Black life, of health and sex, race and punishment, and the gaps between our desires and our politics. Next slide, please. This cover gives me the goosebumps, and it should. It's a thriller for fans of The Chain and I Am Pilgrim. A missing child is reported in London and then in Florida. Also not good, y'all. And in Oregon, an unknown organization's conspiracy to bring America to its knees unfolds. Abir is one of the most exciting writers of color on the crime scene, and we expect his fan base to grow. And Mick Herron loves Hunted. Next slide, please. Oh, we're moving on to nonfiction. Let's see what the next slide is. Yes, The Dead Don't Need Reminding. In this memoir, Julian Randall transforms pop culture moments into deeply personal explorations of grief, family, and the American way. He envisions his fight to stay alive through a striking medley of media, ranging from Into the Spider-Verse and Jordan Peele movies and to BoJack Horseman and the music of Odd Future. This will appeal to a wide readership drawn to the pop cultural signposts that the writer uses to tell his coming of age story in a fresh, relatable voice. Next slide, please. The Situation Room. George Stephanopoulos, former senior advisor to President Clinton and host of This Week and Good Morning America, recounts the never before told crises that decided the course of history, from the place 12 presidents made their highest pressure decisions, the White House Situation Room. This room defines American power and its role in the world, and it's shrouded in secrecy and mystery, detailing close calls and disasters narrowly averted. The Situation Room will take readers through dramatic turning points into a dozen presidential administrations. Next slide, please. Hollywood Pride. Illustrated with more than 175 full color and black and white images, Hollywood Pride points to a bright future of LGBTQ plus representation in cinema by revealing the story of the community's inclusion and erasure, its invisibility and visibility, and its triumphs and tragedies. Next slide, please. A decade ago, Dr. Alan Townsend's family received two unthinkable catastrophic diagnoses. His 4-year-old daughter and his brilliant and vivacious wife developed unrelated, life-threatening forms of brain cancer. As he witnessed his young daughter fight during the courageous final months of her mother's life, this lifelong scientist was altered. He began to see scientific inquiry as more than a source of answers to a given problem, but also as a lifeboat, a lens on the world that could help him find peace in the painful realities. So it's a time of increasing polarization. Alan's message on how science and spirituality are connected is important for this time. Next slide, please. The Bookmakers. You might have noticed these slides are in a different order than my notes. So it's like a big, like a roulette wheel now. But this is a celebration of the renegade people who changed the world of books by experimenting in the art of printing, design, and binding. Next slide, please. The Brave in Between. Amy Lowe faced stage 4 metastatic colon cancer, in which long-term survival is unlikely, but 4 years later, lots of heartbreak, joy, and sorrow, mystery, and surprise. Amy is telling her story for fans of Glennon Doyle and Kate Bowler. Next slide, please. Yes, David Tittel has served for 30 years as a judge on the United States Court of Appeals, covered a lot of cases, and all this time he was like hiding the fact that he was going blind, and then he finally came to terms with his blindness, and he has a dog and much high-tech help, and he's at peace with the fact that blindness is a part of who he is, and readers with all sorts of their own stories will relate. Next slide, please. Oh yes, back to fiction. Just a lot of exciting romance coming up. Outstanding. One only has a burlesque performer and a professional ballerina in the same book. That's Second Nightstand. Next slide, please. Science fiction, a potpourri of upcoming romantasy, and action-packed epic fantasy by legendary comic book writer Gail Simone. The cover is going to be life-changing because, that's not exactly life-changing there. Next slide, please. Thank you all, and Emily for her patience during the planning. We're grateful that you joined us today. Use the Edelweiss Connect collection and send questions to library@hpgusa.com. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pamela Austin. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for HTP Books or Harlequin Trade Publishing. I'm so thrilled to share our upcoming releases with you. Thanks for attending. So on the next slide, we have some exciting debuts. First up, just The Emperor in the Endless Palace by Justinian Huang is an epic romantasy. It starts with a retelling of a love story between Emperor Ai and his male lover Dong Xian, one that led to their deaths and the fall of the Han Dynasty. In this retelling, we meet the two lovers in 4 BC, and then again in 1740, and finally again in modern-day Los Angeles. This is a sweeping supernatural romance blending folklore with tradition, love with ruin, and redefines queer love throughout centuries. And then next to a novel that can be best described as Counterfeit meets Crazy Rich Asians, Women of Good Fortune by Sophie Wan is a delight. It's a heist novel set against a high society Shanghai wedding in which the reluctant bride and her two best friends, each with their own personal motives and fed up with the way society treats women, forge a plan to steal all the gift money on the big day. The novel is funny, dazzling, and surprisingly heartfelt. Booklist in its starred review called it sharp, biting, and brilliant. And then on the next slide, we have what's new in thrillers. The New Couple in 5B by Lisa Unger. This is a spine-chilling tale centered around a couple who inherit a luxury apartment with a sinister past. The narrative is an electrifying blend of danger and deceit, reminiscent of classics like Rosemary's Baby and Hitchcock's Rear Window. And then Everyone is Watching by Heather Gudenkauf follows 5 contestants who are chosen for a reality game show. Secluded and cut off from the outside world in a Northern California estate, the contestants soon realize this isn't just about winning, it's about survival. And then on to another thriller juggernaut, the author Taryn Fisher, whose novel Never Never, co-written with best friend Colleen Hoover, spent over 20 weeks on the New York Times bestsellers list. Well, Taryn is back with Good Half Gone. This is about Iris and Piper, twin sisters. When they were teens, Piper was kidnapped and trafficked. One day, months later, Piper's newborn son is dropped on the family's doorstep with a note in Piper's handwriting that simply says twin. What follows is Iris's search for her sister that leads her to unimaginable places, including Shoal Island Hospital for the Criminally Insane. And then She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. This is the Mary Kubica. This one's about an ICU nurse whose patient is a young woman who jumped from a bridge and is now in a coma. When a mysterious stranger comes to visit the young girl in hospital, the nurse finds herself digging deeper into her patient's story. In its starred review, Library Journal called She's Not Sorry Mary Kubica's best one yet, with multiple twists and unreliable characters that will hold readers until the nail-biting end. This is Gone Girl meets medical mystery that turns sinister, and the twist will stop you in your tracks. And then over on the next slide, we have new in romance. The cleverly titled Kilt Trip by Alexander Kiley is a Scotland-set enemies to lovers rom-com when travel consultant Addie is sent to Scotland to help proud Scotsman Logan turn his failing family business around. In working together, the two discover their unmistakable chemistry. With plenty of comedic antics to make you laugh and swoony one-liners to knock you off kilter, Kilt Trip is a rom-com with a big heart that will have you reaching for your passport. Next, the good ones are taken by Taj McCoy is a wonderfully swoony friends to lovers story about Maggie, a fabulous character some readers will remember from Taj's novel Savvy Sheldon Feels Good as Hell. Maggie is putting in the work to find her own happily ever after before her two best friends' weddings. But while she battles her way through the LA dating scene, her college bestie Garrett keeps getting in the way until he finally confesses that he's been in love with her all along, and she'll have to decide if it's worth risking their friendship for something more. And then Maya's Laws of Love by Alina Kujawa is the story of Maya Mirza, who travels from Canada to Karachi to get married to her fiancé. But a chance encounter on the flight over and an unexpected layover in Switzerland upends her plans. This rom-com explores Maya's journey and challenges the laws and traditions that shape her. The author notes in her foreword that her goal is to show Pakistani Muslim women that they're worthy of a whirlwind, heart-fluttering romance, and she succeeds. The story is rooted in Pakistani and Muslim culture and offers plenty of adventure and plot twists. And then on the next slide, we have a couple of titles that are sure to be library favorites. First, The Day Tripper by James Goodhand follows Alex, a young man in 1995 who's about to study at Cambridge. He's in love with an amazing woman and has his whole life ahead of him until a run-in with a bully leaves him bruised and bloody. The next day, he wakes up in a room he's never been in before. When he snatches a newspaper, he realizes it's now the year 2010. The following day, he's in the year 2019. This is an incredibly affecting novel and a perfect book club pick that will appeal to fans of The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, and This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straw. And then last but certainly not least is The Book of Thorns by Hester Fox. Hester, of course, is best known for The Witch of Willow Hall and The Last Heir to Blackwood Library. This tale of sisters, magic, and family set against the lush backdrop of the Napoleonic Wars is Hester's latest masterpiece. Two sisters, each fleeing unjust fates, each never knowing the other existed, meet on the opposite sides of the battlefield. Together, they use their inherited magical connection to the natural world to solve their mother's mysterious death and their father's disappearance, all while keeping themselves and the men they love alive as war rages around them. This novel is a gentle pivot away from Hester's Gothic stories, but it still has all the magic and clever heroines that her readers love. It's a perfect gateway book for new readers and a treat for returning fans. It's full of magic, family, and heart. And then finally, on the last side is my contact information. Feel free to reach out with any questions or galley requests. And thank you so much for listening.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm excited for the chance to chat with you all today about Sourcebooks adult titles we're super excited for. All right, next slide. My name is Emily Ludloff, and I'm the Library Marketing Specialist at Sourcebooks. Nice to meet you. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and our brand new Instagram for up-to-date information, galleys, and free resources. Please feel free to email me with any questions you may have. Now on to the books. Next. We'll start with our fiction imprint, Sourcebooks Landmark. Next slide. The Last Murder at the End of the World is an inventive, high-concept murder mystery from best-selling author of The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. On a remote island, 122 villagers and 3 scientists live in peaceful harmony. The villagers are content to do what they're told by the scientists, until one of them is found brutally stabbed to death. The murder has triggered a lowering of the security system around the island, which was the only thing keeping a deadly fog at bay. If the murder isn't solved within 92 hours, the fog will smother the island and everyone on it. But the security system has also wiped everyone's memories of exactly what happened the night before, which means that someone on the island is a murderer and they don't even know it. Next slide, please. Long After We Are Gone by librarian Tara Shelton Harris follows 4 siblings, each fighting their own personal battles as they return home in the wake of their father's death in order to save their family's home and ancestral land from being sold out from under them. Told in alternating viewpoints, Long After We Are Gone is a searing portrait of the power of family and letting go of things that no longer serve you, exploring the burden of familial expectations, the detriment of miscommunication, and the lessons and legacies we pass on to our children. I cannot express enough how good this book is, so I hope you guys all give it a read. Next slide, please. The Townsend Family Recipe for Disaster by Shauna Robinson follows May Townsend, who has always dreamed of her family in the South. So when news arrives that her grandmother has died, she decides it's time. It's time to finally explore her Black roots. What she finds is a family in turmoil, a long-standing rift still intact, a lost mac and cheese recipe causing grief, and a Townsend family barbecue on the brink of disaster. Not willing to let her dreams of family slip away, May steps up to save the day. Mac and cheese recipe be damned, to throw a barbecue everyone will remember. Next slide, please. All right, for a murderously good time, we suggest trying one of our mystery thrillers from our Poison Pen Press imprint. Next slide, please. The Mystery Writer is a literary thriller from best-selling author Sulari Gentile. When Theo Benton shows up on her brother's doorstep with 2 suitcases and an unfinished novel, she expects to face a few challenges. What Theo never expects is to be drawn into a hidden literary world. When her mentor, a highly successful author, is brutally murdered, Theo wants the killer to be found and justice to be served. Then the police begin looking at her brother as the prime suspect, and Theo does the unthinkable in order to protect him. But the writer has left a trail, a thread out of the labyrinth in the form of a story. Next slide, please. That Night in the Library is a chilling literary mystery, Locked Room from librarian Eva Yurchek. On the night before graduation, 7 students gather in the basement of their university's rare books library. But just a few minutes into their celebration, the lights go out, and one of them drops dead. As the body count rises, with nothing but the books to protect them, the group must figure out how to survive the night while trapped with a murderer. Next slide. Now on to nonfiction titles from source books. Next slide, please. In The Secret History of Bigfoot, journalist and self-diagnosed skeptic John O'Connor is curious to learn more about the elusive primate known as Bigfoot. So he embarks on a quest through the North American wilds in search of Bigfoot, its myth and meaning. Alongside an eccentric cast of characters, he explores the zany and secretive world of cryptozoology, while examining the forces behind our ever-widening belief in the supernatural. As O'Connor treks through the shrouded forests of the Pacific Northwest, listens to first-hand accounts, and attends Bigfoot conventions, he's left wondering, what happens when the lines between myth and reality blur? Next slide, please. And if you're interested in more nonfiction titles, may I present you with some of the noteworthy titles from Callisto, a new imprint from Source Books. From Callisto, you can find anything from crafts, cookbooks, mindfulness and spiritual healing, witchy guides, and so much more. You can see that more that I alluded to at this link. Next slide, please. All right, and then for you romance lovers, there are so many new noteworthy titles coming to you from Bloom Books. And because I don't have enough time to fangirl with you about them, just know that they're here for you whenever you need them. Next slide, please. And that's all the books I have for you today, but please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and don't forget to vote for Library Reads. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maureen Meekins, presenting on behalf of the Penguin Random House Library Marketing Team. And before I dive into the books, I wanted to quickly shout out a few recent marketing highlights, starting with our 24 Books to Read in 2024 campaign, showcasing 24 of the books we think everyone will be talking about in the first half of this year. For more information, you can visit the 10 URL on the screen. And on our next slide, if you haven't already, you can head over to our new website to check out our complete collection of spring 2024 catalogs featuring new and nonfiction, sci-fi and fantasy, audio originals, and much more. You can also head to this by visiting the tiny URL on the screen. And next, a shout out to our 27th book club brochure, featuring some of the hottest book club picks for your library. You can view and download this and our complete collection of book club brochures by visiting the 10 URL on the screen. And now on to the books. All We Were Promised by Ashton Lattimore. This historical fiction debut is inspired by the explosive story of a divided city set during pre-Civil War Philadelphia. It's 1837, and after Charlotte escaped from the crumbling White Oaks plantation down south, she'd expected freedom to feel different from her former life as an enslaved housemaid. Instead, she's locked away playing servant to her white-passing father as they both attempt to hide their identities from slave catchers who would destroy their new lives. Longing to break away, Charlotte befriends Nell, a budding abolitionist from one of Philadelphia's wealthiest Black families. Just as Charlotte starts to envision a future, a familiar face from her past reappears. Evie, her friend from White Oaks, has been brought to the city by the plantation mistress, and she's desperate to escape. But as Charlotte and Nell conspire to rescue her, they soon discover that fighting for Evie's freedom may cost them their own. All We Were Promised is the story of three women in vastly different circumstances, risking everything for one another in an American city straining to live up to its loftiest ideals. It's perfect for readers of the Underground Railroad and the personal librarian. Next slide, please. And this is for fans of Celeste Ng and Britt Bennett. It's Real Americans by Rachel Kong, the award-winning author of Goodbye Vitamin. This exhilarating novel of American identity spans 3 generations, and it begins on the precipice of Y2K in New York City when 22-year-old Lily Chen, an unpaid intern, meets Matthew. Matthew is everything Lily is not. He's effortlessly attractive, a native East Coaster, and most notably, heir to a vast pharmaceutical empire.
Lily couldn't be more different, but despite all of this, Lily and Matthew fall in love. And now it's 2021, and 15-year-old Nick Chen has never felt like he belonged on the isolated Washington Island where he lives with his single mother, Lily. When Nick sets out to find his biological father, the journey threatens to raise more questions than it provides answers. Exuberant and explosive, Real Americans is a social novel par excellence that asks, are we destined or are we made? And if we're made, who gets to do the making? Can our genetic past overcome? Next slide. This one is for fans of Pachinko and We Were the Lucky Ones. Daughters of Shandong by Eve J. Chung is a propulsive, extraordinary novel inspired by the author's own incredible family story. In 1948, civil war ravages the Chinese countryside, but in rural Shandong, the wealthy landowning Angs, a family with 4 daughters, are more concerned with their lack of an heir. As the communist army closes in on their town, the rest of the prosperous household flees, leaving behind the girls and their mother because they only view them as useless mouths to feed. Realizing that the worst is yet to come, the women plan their escape and embark on a 1,000-mile journey to confront the family that abandoned them. Told in assured, evocative prose with impeccably drawn characters, Daughters of Shandong is a hopeful, powerful story about the resilience of women in war, the enduring love between mothers, daughters, and sisters, and the sacrifices made to lift up future generations. Next slide, please. Next, we have Embracing Hope by Viktor E. Frankl. The Library of Congress lists Man's Search for Meaning as one of the 10 most influential books in history. Now there's another book for his devoted fans to add to their collections. Published here for the first time in the United States, Embracing Hope continues Frankl's enduring life's work and provides even more lessons for those searching for meaning and purpose. It's made up of 4 distinct pieces from Frankl on different themes, all uniting around the idea that we should remain open to life even when we have been subjected to appalling injustice, and even when we are faced with our own mortality and the brief nature of our lives. Whether you're a devoted follower of Frankl's work or a newcomer, this book promises a captivating journey that will leave you pondering its teachings long after you've turned the final page. Next slide, please. Last but not least, we have All the Colors of the Dark. I am very excited about this. It's by New York Times bestselling author Chris Whitaker. It's 1975, and it's a time of change in America. The Vietnam War is ending, Muhammad Ali is fighting Joe Frazier, and in a small town of Montclair, Missouri, girls are disappearing. When the daughter of a wealthy family is targeted, the most unlikely hero emerges, Patch, a local boy with one eye who saves the girl. Patch and those who love him soon discover that the line between triumph and tragedy has never been finer, and that their search for answers will lead them to truths that could mean losing one another. A missing person mystery, a serial killer thriller, a love story, a unique twist on each, Chris Whitaker has written a novel about what lurks in the shadows of obsession and the blinding light of hope. And that wraps up my titles. Thank you so much for having me today.
Sharon Shell from Independent Publishers Group, IPG. Thanks for tuning in. I've got some great titles to share with you from some of our publishers. So next slide. The first title is called Penny Bloods, Gothic Tales of Dangerous Women. It's by Nicole Dittmer, and it is by British Library Publishing, and it's coming out in the beginning of March. Her cheeks were pale and her eyes had the wild and stolid glare which Rodolphe had observed when she awakened from the slumber of the grave. She quitted the castle, and after gazing around her as if uncertain which way to go, she proceeded towards the village. In the mid-1800s, the inexpensive publications known as penny bloods were all the rage in Britain, spinning tales of high Gothic drama, violence, and monstrosity. This literary phenomenon was significant for its depictions of dangerous and transgressive women, which inspired such milestone Gothic works as Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla. Collecting 10 tales from classic and truly obscure penny publications and featuring newly edited texts and insights from Dr. Dittmer's research, this new volume revives a company of witches, femme fatales, vampire mistresses, and deadly criminals to enthrall a new generation of readers. Next slide, please. This next title, called Bored Gay Werewolf by Tony Santarella. Hysterical. It's by Atlantic Books, coming out at the end of February. Brian, an aimless slacker, works doubles at his shift job, forgets to clean his room, and lays about with his friends, Nick and Darby. He's been struggling to manage his transition to adulthood almost as much as his monthly transitions to a werewolf. Really, he's not great at the whole werewolf thing. And his recent murderous slip-ups have caught the attention of Tyler, a millennial were-mentor, determined to take the mythological world by storm. Tyler's got a plan, and weirdly, his self-help punditry actually encourages Brian to shape up and stop accidentally marking out guys who ghosted him on Grindr as potential monthly victims. But as Brian gets closer to Tyler's pack and alienated from Nick and Darby, he realizes that Tyler's expansion plans are much more nefarious than a little lupine enlightenment. Big-hearted, goofy, anarchic, and funny, Bored Gay Werewolf is a smart take on the doomsday logic of late capitalism and the complicated meeting point of masculinity and sexuality. More than that, though, and like Scooby-Doo with Grindr or Stranger Things with sex and ennui, it's a buddy novel about finding your pack, the power of friendship, and learning how to be comfortable in your own shaggy werewolf pelt. Next slide, please. The next title, Blue Notes, by Anne Catherine Bowman, is by Book Hug Press, and it's coming out at the end of February. How much grief is too much? How far should we go to avoid pain? From the author of the international best-selling novel Agatha comes a literary thriller about grief, love, science, and societal norms. A Danish university research group is finishing its study of a new medicine, Calicaine. It's the world's first pill for grief. But psychology professor Thorsten Gelsted suspects that someone has manipulated the numbers to hide a disturbing side effect. When no one believes him, he teams up with 2 young students to investigate. Anna, who has recently experienced traumatic grief herself, and Shadi, whose statistical skills might prevent her from living a quiet life in the shadows. Together, these sleuthing academics try to discover what's really happening before the drug is released to the entire population. Blue Notes is brimming with ethical and existential ideas about the search for identity and one's place in the world, while offering a highly original literary adventure that ultimately underscores the healing power of love. Next slide. The next title is called The Hive by Scarlett Braid, and it's by Bonnier Books, and it's coming out at the end of February as well, and it is a debut novel. A feminist thriller for anyone who's ever sworn revenge on an ex. Should he live or die? You decide. Charlotte Goodwin looks directly at the camera and reveals a chilling truth to the thousands watching her Instagram live broadcast. She has killed her ex-boyfriend's new partner in cold blood, but she's not finished yet. With bloodied hands, she takes a calm sip of tea before continuing. Lincoln Jackson will now make his confession. Then the viewers must vote to decide whether he should live or die. The public display sends shockwaves rippling through the online community, and the numbers of viewers skyrockets. But as Lincoln's past is revealed, how will he be judged? Bonded by mutual tragedy, Charlotte's 3 best friends have supported each other through all the soaring highs and devastating lows of their lives. But now in Charlotte's hour of need, her friends also face a choice, whether to help her get away with murder. The Hive explores the darkest fears of the relationship between social media and mental health, but most importantly, the strength of sisterhood against all the odds. Next slide. The next title is called The Murmurs, and this is by Michael J. Malone. It is by Orenda Books, and it's coming out at the beginning of April. And it's the first in a new series, so we're really excited about that. In the beginning, there was fear, white-hot, nerve-shredding fear, terrifying premonitions of death, and then they started, the murmurs. On the first morning of her new job at Hartfield House, a care home for the elderly, Annie Jackson wakens from a terrifying dream, and when she arrives at the home, she knows that the first old man she meets is going to die. How she knows this is a terrifying mystery, but it is the start of horrifying premonitions, a rekindling of the curse that has trickled through generations of women in her family. It's a wicked gift known as only as the murmurs. With its reappearance comes an old forgotten fear that is about to grip Annie Jackson, and this time it will never let go. A compulsive gothic thriller and a spellbinding supernatural mystery about secrets in small communities, about faith, courage, and self-preservation. The Murmurs is a startling and compulsive read from one of Scotland's finest authors. Next slide. So you guys can find all of our great catalogs on our website, and also lots of great DRCs available on Edelweiss and NetGalley. So thank you so much for listening.
Hi, everybody. I'm Celia Madison, and I'm the Library Marketing Manager for Ingram Publishing Services. We are the home of independent publishing. I have 7 titles I'm going to just breeze through today. Next slide, please. So I probably don't need to remind you about Tiffany Haddish. Haddish is a comedian and actress who broke out with the smash film Girls Trip. Her last book, The Last Black Unicorn, was a New York Times bestseller and a critical darling, and was considered one of the best comedy books of the year. Like she was in The Last Black Unicorn, Haddish is both sentimental, honest, and of course raucously funny. This book gets deeper into some of the darknesses of her life, including her deeply complicated relationship with her father and her experience in the foster care system as a child. It's a blistering and hilarious story about life, Hollywood, and making your own decisions. And we have this beautiful, sparkly package that is, of course, immediately eye-catching. Next slide, please. This is Ocean's Godori, a giant sprawling space opera from Lena Waithe's imprint. Ocean's Godori is set in a Korean space future and stars Ocean Yoon as a disgraced space pilot. She has alienated herself from the Alliance, the Korean space agency, will find herself sucked back into their ways when her best friend is framed for the heinous murder of his wealthy family. Ocean soon finds herself caught in the middle, trying to protect her friend and to find out the truth about what happened. There's romance, adventure, gunslinging, and thoughtful investigations into the colonialism that has shaped Korea's history and could shape this imagined future. Godori is a popular card game that is both played amongst families and in illegal gambling rings in South Korea, which hints at the complicated intimacy of this novel. This is a book for any science fiction lovers, as well as people who just love a big, complicated family story. Fans of The Mandalorian or the Andor series definitely shouldn't miss out. Next slide, please. In advance of the summer, I have a great beach read to share with you today. This is I Want You More, a queer romance about a grieving ghostwriter named Zara and a celebrity chef named Jane. Zara has started a flirtation with the woman in her home in California, but she can't turn down the major money offered by Jane, an egomaniac chef with a lively online following. The two grow closer as they work together at Jane's lavish Hamptons house, maybe a little bit too close as they start to mimic each other's behavior. They're sharing outfits and habits along with a growing life together. And then suddenly, Jane lashes out online and finds herself on the outskirts of her once adoring fan community, forcing Zara to question what her own steps should be. This is a twisty, tense, and enthralling story about celebrity, lust, and obsession set in a comically picturesque beachside town in the Hamptons. Next slide, please. This is Brendan Taylor's first acquisition. Brendan Taylor is the author of Real Life and The Late Americans, and Alan Bratton's novel is a gorgeous rethinking of Shakespeare's Henry plays. Hal is a London kid stuck in a holding pattern. His internship sucks, his dad is constantly guilt-tripping him, and his siblings are bickering. Somehow, all these things are left to him to solve. All Hal wants to do is to have fun, dance, drink, and flirt, if only he could overcome his terrifying fear of loneliness and his deep sense of Catholic guilt. This is a lovely queer novel with all the intelligence and wit you'd expect from a book that Brendan Taylor is raving about. And most importantly, it's one of those rare queer novels that actually has a happy, uplifting ending. It's literary, beautifully crafted, and joyous in ways that feels both earned, affirming, and compelling. Next slide, please. Shanghai Landers is the big book from Spiegel and Grau this year, and it's going to be one of our biggest novels of the year. This is a stunning, ambitious debut poised for a Tommy Pico-esque breakout hit. Julie Min is a super connected and buzzy writer. She's the editor-in-chief of the Shanghai Literary Review, and she has a lot of friends and fans already. Shanghai Landers starts in 2040 with Leo Yang. He's a successful real estate investor and general man about town. He has a perfect cosmopolitan family, his glamorous wife, and 3 college college-age daughters who are all part of this upper-crust jet-setting class. We move backwards in time as the novel progresses, all the way back to 2014, as we watch the climate heal, the sea levels lower, and the family get younger, all while we're experiencing the complications and tensions of this family deepen and grow. This is a can't-miss literary event of the year, and we have a very big first printing, as you'll see, 50K, to match the coverage that we're expecting. Next slide, please. Okay, jumping back to romance, because who can resist a good romance novel? Lissy Chang is a burnt-out grad student who is making ends meet at the family restaurant when she accidentally serves the Lin family a dish containing shrimp paste, which triggers the youngest daughter's shellfish allergy and sets her on a roller coaster ride with Preston Lin, who is a Stanford PhD candidate, a general local heartthrob, and of course, a total jerk. If you did not already guess from this title or from my description, Pride and Preston Lin is a vivacious retelling of Pride and Prejudice. It's set in a gossipy Asian American California community where everybody is constantly in each other's business. Dudley is a well-known Regency romance writer, and she's able to incorporate and update the tropes of Regency romance with wit and fresh cleverness, transforming this oft-adapted tale into something that feels totally new and fun. Next slide, please. A Good Life. Two sisters in the Basque countryside reunite under sad circumstances. Emma and Agatha were once exceptionally close, despite being complete opposites, but a tragedy split them years ago, and their relationship has never been the same. When their beloved grandmother passes, they return to her home and reconnect. Alternating between Agatha and Emma, between past and present, we see these two women grow and develop in all their complexities. Virginie Grimaldi is a superstar in her native France. She's one of the most beloved contemporary writers, writing about women. You could think of her as kind of like the French Sally Rooney, and it's a delight to finally be able to experience her in English. Next slide. These are all my titles. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have galleys of everything available, and just reach out if you'd like to know more or need a copy.
Hi, I'm Deb Seeger from Grove Atlantic. I'm the publicity director here. I'm going to tell you about a few books that we have coming between March and July, and all of our galleys are available on Edelweiss and NetGalley, and you can check out our all of our books on our catalog that you can find on our website. The first book I'm going to tell you about is Colin Barrett's Wild Horses. With his acclaimed and award-winning collections, Young Skins and Homesickness, Colin Barrett has cemented his reputation as one of Ireland's most contemporary darling stylists. Barrett now expands his canvas with Wild Horses, a debut novel that contains as much grit, plot, and linguistic energy as any of his celebrated short stories. Accolades are already pouring in from Sally Rooney, Brandon Taylor, Anne Enright, Colin Toybeen, and we just received a starred book list review. And The Guardian just named Colin one of the debut novelists to watch this season. This is a story about a kidnapping gone wrong in rural Ireland. But in Barrett's hand, this is not a crime novel, but the impetus for the reader to get to know the characters involved in all their complicated and sometimes humorously heartbreaking glory. The next slide. The next book we're really excited about is Leif Enger's new novel, I Cheerfully Refuse. Enger has been hailed as a storyteller of great humanity and huge heart. He's the author of the New York Times best-selling books Peace Like a River and Virgil Wander, both novels beloved by readers around the globe for their grace, charm, and depth of meaning. His new novel, I Cheerfully Refuse, is set in a not-too-distant America and is once again sure to capture readers' hearts. It's the tale of Rainey, a bereaved and pursued musician embarking under sail Lake Superior in search of his departed, deeply beloved library and bookselling wife, Lark. Rainey seeks refuge in the harbors, fogs, and remote islands of the inland sea. Amidst the Gulliver-like challenges of life at sea and no safe landings, he is lifted by the physical beauty, surprising humor, generous strangers, and an unexpected companion in a young girl who comes aboard. And as his innate guileless nature begins to make an inadvertent rebel of him, Rainey's private quest for the love of his life grows into something wider and wilder. sweeping up friends and foe alike in his strengthening wake. This novel is about hope for our future selves. Next slide. Alexandra, from the award-winning New York Times bestselling author of Don't Let Go the Dogs Tonight, Alexandra Furler comes Fee, her most personal memoir yet. She begins, fair to say, I was in a ribald state the summer before my 50th birthday. It's summer in Wyoming and Alexandra is barely hanging on, reeling from a divorce, freshly sober, and piercing her way uncertainly through a volatile new relationship with a young woman. Alexandra vows to get herself back on even keel. And then suddenly, her 21-year-old son, Fee, dies in his sleep. No stranger to loss, young siblings, a parent, a home country, Alexandra nonetheless leveled. At the same time, she is painfully aware she cannot succumb and abandon her two surviving daughters as her mother before her had done. Alexandra journeys up and down the spine of the Rocky Mountains in an attempt to grieve herself whole. There are no answers. There are countless answers in poetry, in ritual, in routine, in nature, and the indigenous wisdom she absorbed as a child in Zimbabwe. By turns devastating, unexpectedly, blissfully funny, Fee recounts the wide medicine of painstakingly grieving a child and a cultural that has no instruction for it. Next slide. Atlantic Monthly Press publishes a wide array of fiction, including Val McDermott, Mark Billingham, Dion Meyer, and Donna Leone, who you'll see we have her newest Brunetti novel, A Refiner's Fire, coming in July. And this June, we're publishing James Lee Burke's newest Dave Robichaux novel, where Burke lets Dave's partner, Clete Purcell, shine for the very first time. And we have two new debuts to tell you about. Brendan Flattery's The Dredge, a pulse-quickening novel in which two estranged brothers must confront the violence of their childhood when they learn a pond where they had played as a child will be dredged, bringing long secrets to the surface once again. This one just earned a starred PW review. And lastly, Henry Wise's debut, Holy City, with incredible accolades coming from S.A. Cosby, Megan Abbott, Eli Cranner, and Ace Atkins, among others. This novel is about, after decades of self-imposed exile, Will Seams returns home from Richmond to a rural South Side, Virginia. Taking a job as deputy sheriff in a landscape given way to crime and defeat, impoverished and abandoned, this remote land of tobacco plantations, raised forests, and boarded up homes seems stuck in the past in a state that is trying to forget its complex history and move on. Will's efforts to go about his life are wrecked when a brutal homicide claims the life of a friend, forcing Will to face the true impetus for his return, to pay a debt to a Black friend who in an act of selfless courage years ago protected Will and suffered dearly. Meanwhile, a man Will knows to be innocent is arrested for the murder, and despite Will's pleas, his boss seems all too content to wrap up the case. Will must weigh in his personal guilt against his public duty when the local Black community hires Benicio Watts, an unpredictable private detective from out of town, to help him with find the real killer. It would seem an ideal pairing as she has experience and Will is privy to the details of the case, but it doesn't take long for either to realize they much prefer to operate alone. Next slide. Oh, thanks for coming, and please feel free to reach out to me for galleys. As I said, everything's on NetGalley and Edelweiss, and look forward to see hopefully some of you at PLA. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. This is Julia from Simon & Schuster. I'm here today to uncover some late spring and early summer titles for the many kinds of readers in your life, starting with those who love the short and sparse novels that pack a powerful and emotional punch, and those who would enjoy Clear by Carrie Davies. The award-winning writer, who you might know from her previous novels, West and The Mission House, first thought of the idea that's at the heart of this novel while she was a Cullman Fellow at the New York Public Library. Clear is a stunning, exquisite novel about a minister dispatched to a remote island off Scotland to clear the last remaining inhabitant who has zero intention of leaving. This is perfect for fans of Claire Keegan or the film The Banshees of Inisherin, and Clear will deeply surprise the readers as it takes on language and environment and the shock of recognizing oneself through another person, plus the complexities of political upheaval as they play out in relationships. It's just 208 pages, so it does demand to be read in a single sitting. And when you do, we do want to hear your thoughts. So if you're interested in reading this unforgettable tale, then I'll put something in the chat where you can either email us or fill out a form, and you can participate in an early read and review. So keep an eye on the chat or email us directly. Next, please. So good news for all of you librarians, book clubs, library lovers. There is a new novel by Janet Skesley Charles after a decade of researching the subject of her new book, Miss Morgan's Book Brigade, at the Morgan Library, the NYPL, and archives across France. And that is where readers will find themselves learning about this extraordinary, little-known history. Miss Morgan's Book Brigade is based on the true story of Jessie Carson, the American librarian who changed the literary landscape of France and helped to rebuild its citizens' lives after the Great War by establishing children's libraries and training France's first women librarians near the front lines as a part of the American Committee for Devastated France. This is on sale April 30th, and it's a tribute to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of literature, and ultimately the courage it takes to make a change. Next, please. So if you loved Colm Tóibín's Brooklyn, I'm happy to tell you that the 20-year-long wait for Long Island will prove to be well worth it to spend time with these characters again. If you haven't yet been dazzled by the author's most popular work, do not worry. This moving and fully realized standalone novel has woven scenes from the past for those readers. Here we find Eilish Lacey in 1976, the mother of two teenagers, living her life on Long Island and reflecting on her choice to marry Tony and to establish a life and family in America. A shocking revelation puts Eilish in a position where she must consider how she has ended up here, so far from where her life has started. And as this author has a way of putting you inside the minds of his characters, Long Island is a beautiful exploration of the inner workings of a woman who is finding herself along with the reader. Next. Did I Ever Tell You by Genevieve Gwen Kingston comes from the author's modern love essay. She put her unspent love in a cardboard box. When Gwen was just 3 years old, her mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. But defying all odds, she lived another 8 years, and during this time, she filled a chest with gifts and letters to Gwen and her brother Jamie for every major milestone and birthday through age 30. So that includes the day that Gwen got her driver's license, the day she graduated from high school. And now Gwen is in her 30s, and Did I Ever Tell You begins with 3 unopened boxes that remain. That's engagement, marriage, and first baby. 2 decades after her mother's passing, she has had extraordinary efforts to create a lifelong conversation beyond the grave. So this is a story of a family that's driven by grief and mental illness, and the story of the author's navigation through both. It's also a story that emphatically declares, as Gwen's mother does in a particularly powerful letter, that love is stronger than death. Next. Now, beneath this stunning cover is an epic tale based on true events that illuminates a forgotten yet legendary pirate queen and her rise to power to sail the Caribbean, plus the forbidden love story that will shape the course of history. This is for readers who love historical novels that combine razor-sharp social observations with moving and transportive writing like Washington Black or Babel. And these readers will love The Ballad of Jacquet Delhay. Brioni Cameron's debut takes you through a thrilling buccaneering escapade filled with siege and battle, and it offers a tender exploration of friendship, love, and the search for freedom and home. Next. So I'll leave you with these 3 summer releases that you can't and you won't miss. Christina Lauren returns with The Paradise Problem, a delicious new romance between the buttoned-up heir of a grocery chain and his free-spirited artist ex as they fake their relationship, hoping to receive a massive inheritance. Then, hearkening to Agatha Christie's classic And Then There Were None, Ruth Ware's high-tension thriller One Perfect Couple follows 5 couples trapped on a storm-swept island as a killer stalks among them. Lastly, look forward to Stephen Graham Jones's I Was a Teenage Slasher, a summer teen movie of a novel. It's a classic slasher with a twist that has gone full blood-curdling tragic. It is set in 1989 Lamesa, Texas, where you might find yourself rooting for the killer. Next, please. Now for additional resources, recommendations, author opportunities, and support for your freedom to read, please visit our website, simonandschuster.net/library. And on the last slide again is my email. That's julia.parham@simonandschuster.com. And if you have any questions about youth or academic services, our email is education.library@simonandschuster.com. And I will put that all in the chat. So thank you so much for your time.
Hi, folks. Sorry, my computer is a little delayed here. Hello, I'm Annie Mazes. I am with the Hachette Book Group, and today I will be talking about some Workman titles. Please reach out if you have any questions. I'd love to hear from you. Our first title I'm going to be talking about is called Days of Wonder by Carolyn Levitt. As a teenager, Ella Fitchburg found great love, but her life was unexpectedly upended when she was accused of trying to murder her boyfriend's father and sentenced to 25 years in prison. When she learns she's pregnant shortly after sentencing, she reluctantly decides to give up the child. Ella is released after serving only 6 years, determined to get her daughter back. However, she's forced to hide her identity and lives in a constant state of deception. She realizes that she's been searching for a way to uncover and live with the truth of what actually happened to her. Yet a very central mystery endures. Neither her boyfriend Jude nor Ella can remember the events that led up to the attempted murder. This is for fans of Miranda Cowley-Heller's The Paper Palace and Allegra Goodman's Sam. Days of Wonder is a gripping, high-drama page-turner about the elusive nature of redemption and the profound reach of love. Next up is Their Divine Fires. This is a really captivating debut novel. I'm excited that this is on our list. I think an author to watch. It interweaves folktale and myth for readers of Pachinko and the Mountains Sing, which is a huge favorite of mine. A family saga that begins at the dawn of the Chinese Revolution and spans 100 years to trace the intricate lives of 4 generations of Chinese and Chinese American women grappling with history, obligations, betrayal, and love in order to come into their own power. This book draws on the stories of the author's great-grandmother and her great-uncles, as well as her mother's experiences during the Cultural Revolution. Wendy Chen infuses Their Divine Fires with a passion that will transport the reader back to powerful moments in history. Super duper my jam. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Lillian. Hi, Carolyn. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. Next up is All Friends Are Necessary. This novel captures a 21st century type of love and dating with a Bay Area perspective, very much a character in the book, the setting, while exploring everything from socially distanced hookups to the stranger-than-fiction world of OnlyFans. This novel also centers platonic friendship as the balm to the hardest trials of our lives and as the foundation of the communities that sustain us. Plus, there are a lot of ferns, so if you're really big into plants, this book is for you. This is ideal for fans of Jakira Diaz, Nina LaCour, and Garth Greenwell. Next up, we have Beep. If you enjoy a good animal protagonist, think Hidden Kingdom, but not quite so misanthropic, Beep is for you. Beep is an adorable and personable squirrel monkey who is en route into the Costa Rican rainforest to find a mate, but instead meets Inga, an American teenager on vacation with her family. Inadvertently and often hilariously, Beep makes his way back to New York with Inga, and with her courageously devoted help and with the help of just about every animal on Earth, Beep manages to change the destiny of the world. Along the way, he has a great deal to say about humanity and the divisions among us, our alien cities, our strange practices, our false superiority, our vanity, our entitlement, our folly. Humans are amazing, as well as our beauty and our promise unfulfilled. Neither earnest nor preachy, it is full of Bill Roebuck's humor and inspiration and remarkable new ways of understanding how we live. Switch over to some nonfiction, starting with Superconvergence, which is a book that I needed a little help understanding, but once you get it, it really is very interesting. So the challenge we face is that while the ability to engineer the world around us is advancing at this crazy level of speed, our ability to understand the scope and scale and implications of these changes is only increasing linearly. And our capacity to govern these capabilities that we are quickly finding we have in a very responsible and wise manner is moving glacially. So all of these things are happening at different scales. And these timeframes don't mesh up at all and need to be aligned more closely. Jamie Metzl is a thinker who has followed this phenomenon for decades and who integrates science, history, politics, and international affairs to envision a future that many specialists, almost by definition, cannot see. In Superconvergence, Metzl gives us the definitive account of the technological precipice on which we stand and the map to where we can go from here. Next up, excuse me, is Better, Faster, Farther. Despite women proving their abilities on the track time and time again, men in the medical establishment, media, and athletic associations have fought to keep them fragile and sometimes literally tried to push them out of the race. See Catherine Switzer, The Boston Marathon, 1967. Award-winning journalist Maggie Mertens transports us from that first boundary-breaking marathon in Greece to the earliest officially sanctioned women's races of the 20th century, to the most intense running a person can participate in today, the ultra marathons like the infamous Spine Race, whose current record holder is a woman. This is for readers of Good and Mad, Born to Run, and Fly Girls. Better, Faster, Farther takes us inside the lives, the races, and the victories of the women who redefine society's image of strength and power. And my last book is one I'm excited about, A Gentleman and a Thief. Well, I'm excited about all of them, right? But this one's really fun. I really enjoyed Dean Jobs' The Case of the Murderous Dr. Cream, which was a Carnegie Medal longlister. I'm even more excited about this one because my true crime interests lie more in con artists than murderers. In the 1920s, Arthur Berry was hailed as the greatest jewel thief who ever lived. Over 7 years, he stole almost $60 million in today's money worth of gems from a Rockefeller and heiress to the Woolworth department store fortune, an oil magnate, Wall Street bigwigs, top executives at General Motors, and a famous polo player. This high-speed read covers the rollicking, caper-filled rise and dramatic downfall of this master thief. So, lots to explore. Hope there's something in there that sounds good to you. And thank you so much for your time.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm Katie Vaughn, the Assistant Marketing Manager at Bloomsbury, and I'll ask Grace to drop our Google form link in the chat so you can easily find the books I mentioned on NetGalley and Edelweiss and request some review copies. But for now, we will jump right into the first slide. So coming up soon in March, we have the highly anticipated first novel from Booker Prize-winning translator Jennifer Croft, The Extinction of Irina Ray. It's a beguiling novel about 8 translators and their search for a world-renowned author who goes missing in the Polish forest. And it's received 2-starred reviews, one from Publishers Weekly, which calls it a wickedly funny mystery, and one from Booklist, which describes it as delightfully wry. Then also in March, we have the latest from fan favorite Natasha Pulley, The Mars House, which is a queer sci-fi marriage of convenience that takes place on Mars. A starred review from PW calls it a thorny and addictive sci-fi romance, and LitHub's most anticipated books of 2024 says that there's a palace intrigue, a slow burn enemies to lovers plot, sassy footnotes, and also there are mammoths. It's a total delight from start to finish. Then in April, we'll have The Good Eater, a vegan search for the future of food, which is an enlightening look at how vegans and their critics are redefining the way the world eats in the 21st century. The author is a Harvard-trained sociologist and vegan who explores the movement's history and its present-day tensions by asking the fundamental question, is there a truly ethical way to eat? Then later in April, we have Your Presence is Mandatory, a riveting debut novel based on real events about a World War II veteran with a secret that could land him in the Gulag and his family who are forced to live in the shadow of all he has not told them. Laura Prescott, author of The Secrets We Kept, calls it a historical epic, an engrossing family saga, and an astute examination of how morality, survival, hope, and love manifest. Then on the next slide, we have Loneliness and Company, a gripping debut novel that takes place in the near future. Our protagonist, Lee, knows that she's the best and a professor favorite, so when she's shockingly assigned to an unknown company in the dead city of New York after graduation, her life goals are completely upended. In this new role, Lee's task is to gather enough research to train an AI how to be a friend. But when the company reveals it's part of a classified government mission to solve loneliness, an emotion erased from society's lexicon decades ago, Lee is determined to prove herself. How far will she go to teach the algorithm? And what does it mean to be a true friend in a world beset by isolation? Then on the next slide, we have Cunning Folk by Tabitha Stanmore, which is a fascinating and well-researched exploration of magic in medieval and early modern Europe. From recovering stolen linens to seizing the throne, people sought out the cunning folk of their communities to provide them with supernatural aid. And throughout the book, you will meet accounts of lovelorn widows and vengeful nobles, selfless healers and renegade monks, and even listen in on Queen Elizabeth I's astrology readings. We might think ourselves too enlightened for magical thinking these days, but the anxieties of our ancestors are instantly recognizable, and their faith in magic isn't such a far cry from our own. Think astrology, crystals, the law of attraction, etc., especially in uncertain times. Then on the following slide, we have Bright and Tender Dark, a thrilling debut about a murder on a college campus and its aftermath 20 years later. The story takes readers from the era of Reddit threads and online obsession to the evangelism-infused culture of the late 90s, featuring multiple characters' points of view to reveal what really happened to Carly. Becky Cooper, author of We Keep the Dead Close, says Joanna Pearson masterfully intercuts between 1999 and 2019, taking us through the egos of academia, the pull of organized religion, and the possibility of miscarried justice to ask, how and when does a woman's life become a ghost story? And then we have one more big title for you on the next slide that I'm really excited to announce to you all. It's That Librarian by Amanda Jones. You might have heard about Amanda's story either through your own communities or in Oprah's speech at the National Book Awards. Amanda is a celebrated Louisiana librarian who stood up for diverse books at a local public hearing in 2022 and was subsequently the target of vicious attacks and death threats from book banning extremists. But Amanda fought back, suing her harassers for defamation, and continues to courageously encourage others to join her in the resistance. This one doesn't hit shelves until late August of this year, but we should hopefully have more to share with you very, very soon. And then finally on the next slide, we have all of these fantastic titles on deck as well. I will show you how it was as a raw, irreverent, boots-on-the-ground account by a young Ukrainian reporter of his country heroically defending itself against the Russian invasion. Wide Awake is a propulsive account of our history's most surprising and most consequential political club, the Wide Awake Anti-Slavery Youth Movement. Greekish is full of everyday recipes with Greek roots that bring big Mediterranean flavor. Getting to Know Death is Gail Godwin's reckoning with the meaning of a life, the forms of passion that guide it, and how we preserve ourselves as we write our own endings. And then lastly, End of Active Service is a novel that turns the typical war story on its head, beginning not with enlistment, but with retirement, and locating the life or death stakes not in battle, but in the domestic theaters of fatherhood, family, forgiveness, and love. And on the very last slide, that is it for us. Thank you so much for listening. Please do take a look at that Google form in the chat for review copies, and feel free to reach out to me via email with any questions. Thanks, everybody.
Hello, librarians. It's cold outside, but the future is warm and sunny at Union Square and Company. I am Chris Vicari, Director of Library Marketing here at Union Square and Company. With the next slide, a quick look back last year, many starred reviews in nonfiction core areas and adult fiction. Next slide, please. Now through February, in the areas we publish romance, cozy mystery, history, and personal health. Next slide, please. We had a New York Times bestseller in September with Let's Eat by Dan Pelosi. We like him. And on the next slide, we continue, excuse me, with cooking and lifestyle. I give you on the next slide there, What to Cook by Caroline Chambers. In August, I ask you, my library friends, who has time to cook elaborate dinners every night? I know I don't, and I want efficient recipes and never to regret what I just cooked. Enter recipe developer on the next slide and mom of 2 young children, Caroline Chambers, with her loyal Instagram following and over 50,000 subscribers to her #1 Substack newsletter. Next slide, please. I think she's so popular because she takes the guesswork out of mealtime, over 100 recipes, organized by the time it takes to cook each one, 15, 30, 45 minutes, using few dishes, fewer ingredients, less time, but all with full flavor. She'll save you money and give you the sense to improvise with multiple meal plans as your life gets busier and busier. The book again is What to Cook by Caroline Chambers. Next slide, please. For the love of renovating, mortgage rates are running high. Not great for sellers, but a good time to renovate. Few better than Jordan and Barry, the Brownstone boys, to prescribe a little TLC for your ailing home. Next slide, please. They'll make it all suddenly seem possible with photography from their many projects, highlighting architectural detail and developing wallet-friendly advice to spiff up an outdated room or a gut renovation, turning the house you have into the house you love. Next slide, please. And if renovating and you have a dark side, here's your chance to grow with The Art of Gothic Living by Paul Gambino. It profiles 15 homes and their owners, not only from across the United States, next slide, please, but around the world, that reflect bold, dramatic, dark color palettes, wood and stone details, ornate furniture, and yes, tall windows. You don't have to call yourself a goth or dress all black to be a fan of Gothic decor. Next slide, Me versus Brain, An Overthinker's Guide to Life, a series of essays covering topics of mental health with the signature humor of a TikTok star named Haley Morris, over 4 million TikTok followers. She thinks that the overthinking brain is both a blessing and a curse. No subject here is taboo, as you'll see in her chapter, Brain versus Poop, or sex positions for anxious people, as she confronts moments that arise when your brain and body refuse to cooperate, coupled with the very real challenges of living with intrusive thoughts. The conversation around mental health has shifted from shame to being open about your experiences, and Haley Morris is at the forefront of this change. Next, please. And now for something completely different, The Puerto Rican War, previously self-published by author and high school art teacher John Vasquez Mejias. He recasts this true story as a fable of passion, regret, and hope. Next slide, please. Told entirely in hand-carved wood block prints. It is a graphic history of the Puerto Rican insurrection of 1950, which resulted in 38 deaths and culminated with an assassination attempt against President Truman. It is a touchstone of the Puerto Rican independence movement that rose up across the island and was just as suddenly put down. It is on the next slide, please. Relatively unknown history for many in this country, so we think it will fit for American history buffs and anyone interested in Puerto Rican heritage, including the 6 million Puerto Rican Americans living right now in the United States. Next slide, and moving into adult fiction. Next slide, The Night in Question. She is 87 and has just one leg, but lead character Florrie Butterfield is rather cheerful and thinks nothing more can surprise her. But no, not the case. One evening, someone falls off a building at her adult residence, and she becomes suspicious, wondering if it was an accident or is there a murderer living in her building. In her efforts to learn the truth, Florrie is forced to look back on her own life and a secret that she must at last now confess. All while she learns that when it comes to love, it's never too late. The Night in Question is both a captivating mystery and a tender-wise novel about one woman's unconventional and joyful life. Next slide, please. Providence, a debut novel about an introverted gay English professor named Mark, a man smart enough to get a job at an elite college, but not smart enough to know better. When he meets a sophomore named Tyler, who ensnares him into a web of chaos, deceit, sex, and secrets. Caught in the rush of it all, Mark ignores evidence that Tyler can't be trusted and makes increasingly dangerous choices. But by the time Mark comes to his senses, will it be too late for irreparable damage to be done? Next is When Cicadas Cry, a debut by South Carolina attorney named Caroline Cleveland. In it, a young white woman is killed in a rural church in South Carolina. A black man is found covered in blood kneeling over her. He's in big trouble, though he says he didn't kill her. A down-and-out lawyer is convinced to take this man's case by his detective girlfriend, and the question will be, can they put the pieces together in time to blast open secrets, cold case files, lies, and murder in a small southern town full of racial tension, all while a local family dynasty starts to show their muscle. Next slide, please. Do What Godmother Says. Our newly single lead character named Shanice is cleaning out her grandma's house when she is drawn to a haunting painting. She keeps this family heirloom and soon uncovers the story of its artist, a Harlem Renaissance painter who suddenly disappeared after a wealthy, sinister art patron named Godmother is found murdered. As Shanice digs deeper into the past, paranoia takes over, and she becomes convinced she's being stalked, not seeing that the truth is hiding in plain sight and could be even more shocking than she thought possible. We call it here Director Jordan Peele Meets the Girl with the Pearl Earring, and it's written by author L.S. Stratton, who has written many books, including Our Not So Perfect Strangers, and you can meet her at PLA in April if attending. Lastly, on my next slide, The 5 Stages of Dalice Ramos. Melissa de la Cruz is a #1 New York Times bestselling author with award-winning novels for readers of all ages. Adult romance here. This is Crazy Rich Asians invited to my big fat Greek wedding. While staying in the room block at the White Lotus, a young man named Evan has the hots for his new coworker. Tradition and family focused, Dalice Ramos, and learns from his Filipino friends that if he really wants a chance with her, he's going to have to go through the 5 stages, a courtship ritual well known in the Filipino community. As Evan attempts to prove to her that he can win her heart, their courtship turns into a sizzling secret, where sometimes strict rules are just meant to be broken. Family, tradition, and the lengths we go for love brought to us from the best-selling pen of Melissa de la Cruz. Next slide, please. Good people. Those are the books, and that's the way it is today, Wednesday, January 17th, 2024. Thank you so very much.
Hi, everybody. It is Ivy here from Quirk Books. I'm really excited to talk to you today about a couple of books that we have coming up that I think you're going to be excited about. Next slide, please. This Wretched Valley, this buzzy book published yesterday, and the excitement has been pouring in from readers. The book received starred reviews from Publishers Weekly and Library Journal, and has been praised by authors like ALMA, Rachel Harrison, Chuck Wendig, and Christopher Golden. Especially if you're bereft about the news yesterday that Yellow Jackets is delayed until 2025, this book has got your back. 4 ambitious climbers hike into the Kentucky wilderness. 7 months later, 3 mangled bodies are discovered, but were their deaths simple accidents or the result of something more sinister? This super creepy book was inspired by the Dyatlov Pass incident, and you can learn more and check out a recent interview with author Jenny Kiefer on NPR's Weekend Edition that just aired this past weekend. Next slide, please. The Sneaky Parent. Crafty Tactics for Raising Cheerful, Cooperative Kids, coming March 19th. This is a newly repackaged and refreshed version of a popular 2012 Quirk title that was originally titled How to Con Your Kid. It contains tips, tricks, games, and more to trick your kid into cleaning up, taking a bath, and more. This is a great read for anyone looking for a little parenting help that is just as much fun for you as it is for your kid. Next slide, please. The Z Word. I am so excited to talk to you about this one. This is a refreshing, queer, gory, and funny addition to the zombie genre, which, as you may or may not be aware, has been somewhat revived lately. See what I did there? Resurrected. This book follows chaotic bisexual Wendy, who is trying to find her place in the queer community of San Lazaro, Arizona after a bad breakup, which is particularly difficult because her ex is hooking up with some of her friends. But when people around them start turning into violent, terrifying, mindless husks, perhaps because of the involvement of a certain hard seltzer company, well, that just makes things harder. This is a great read for folks who loved Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin, who called the Z Word sexy, scathing, delightful, and intimately devastating. This has already been named one of the most anticipated books of 2024 by LitHub and Book Riot, so don't miss it. Next slide, please. All right, there is ice and snow outside my window here in the Philadelphia suburbs today, but I am about to tell you about what I think is going to be one of the summer's buzziest beach reads, and that is Such a Bad Influence by Olivia Munter, coming June 4th. When an 18-year-old super popular influencer vanishes in the middle of a brand-sponsored live stream, it's up to her terminally offline older sister to find her. Author Olivia Munter is the co-host of the Bad on Paper podcast with an ample Instagram following of her own, and this uniquely positions her to give an insider view of influencer culture. In this story, with twists you won't see coming, there are subjects you can't stop talking about, like momfluencers, sharenting, influencer culture, and even cults. If you have readers who love Ashley Winstead and Joe Piazza, they'll definitely want to pick this up. And both of those authors read this book and called it addicting. You can look for a cover reveal and excerpt coming soon. And don't forget the library reads deadline for this one is May 1st. Next slide, please. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. You can keep in touch with me, reach out for ARCs. You can find DRCs on NetGalley or Edelweiss, and all kinds of resources available on our website. And I am always happy to help out librarians. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Just a reminder, you'll be getting an email from me in the next couple of days with the recording and the title list and the certificate for attending. So thank you all, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye.